Hello everybody, welcome to this instruction video. This video is the final part of Rozeta. Rozeta is the Scheepjes Kel 2019, designed by Tatjana from Lillebjorn Crochet. In part 11, the final part of Rozeta, we're going to be making the border. So that's this round, so that's 7 rounds that we'll be making around our blanket, and very last step is adding our label to the blanket. I'm going to take you through all the steps that make up the border. To thank you for watching. Hope it's a useful video for you. Round 1 of the border. You're going to have your right side facing, so this here is the bottom of the panel, and we're going to work the first round only in yarn A, and this round is a base round to get your stitch count correct and to get your corners organized. So with the loop on your hook where we finished last week, start with a chain 2. That's not a stitch. Then in the first stitch, so that's that position there, going to work a corner. So in there work 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles. And that's your first corner. Chain 2 and 2 trebles. So that's all in that one position. And that's your first corner worked. We're going to continue along the bottom of the panel and work 214 trebles. That's 1 in every stitch until you get to the other side where you'll have 1 stitch left. So you're going to work a treble in every stitch and you should then have 214. So I'm just going to continue working those 214. And I'll see you on the other side. I've done 214 stitches, so I'm almost on the other side here at the bottom panel. You should have 1 stitch left. You can see there's 1 stitch left, that stitch there. In that last stitch, I'm going to work a new corner. So it's 2 trebles, chain 2, and 2 trebles in the same position. So that's your second corner made. Going to rotate your work and come to the side of the panel. So this is your long edge of the blanket. You're going to work now along the side of the panel that we have. Along this panel, going to work 56 trebles, but only the panel. So at a certain point you see here's a chain 2 space. So before this chain 2 space, along this entire edge here, you work 56 trebles. And you're going to have to kind of eyeball them where you want to place them. There's no real rule or anything. So along the edge, around the stitches, work 1 or 2 trebles in a row, evenly distributing them, kind of seeing how you come. So I'm going to work 56 trebles along here, and I'm going to evenly distribute them. And if I come, so here before the chain 2 space, you should have had your 56 stitches. If you're at this point here and you still have 5 stitches that you need to do, just pull out a few and then work a few more. So just take your time on this and evenly distribute those 56 stitches. I have now made 56 trebles here along the panel, and just to put your mind at ease, I've done this 3 times before they were evenly distributed, and I ended up at this point here with stitch 56. So if you have to do this 2 or 3 times, don't worry about that. That is maybe a bit normal, because the first time round is you've always got too many or too few. So I've got now 56 stitches here. Next up is the chain 2 space. In that chain 2 space, work 1 treble. 1 treble in the chain 2 space. And now we're going to continue here with the first stitch of the corner of our Rozeta. So that stitch there. I'm going to start there with the first of 214 stitches again. And I'm actually just going to mark that first one here. So we've just worked 2 stitches. Where is it? And there. I'm just going to mark that first one, and that's going to help me count, because this is the first stitch of 214. And that's just going to help me count. So I'm going to work 214 trebles, 1 on every stitch, and that should bring you to the bottom of this square. So it should bring you almost to the next corner. So I'm going to work 214 trebles. When you've done 214 stitches, you should be at exactly the last stitch on this edge, and you should now be at the chain 2 space that's at the bottom of your blanket, at the far side from where we started. In this chain 2 space, going to work a corner. It's going to be 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles in this corner, and 2 trebles, and 2. So that's your third corner made. Rotate your blanket again by a quarter, and now along this edge here, going to work 214 trebles again, which should bring you to the other chain 2 space you have on the other side here. So in that first stitch is the first treble. This is 2, and like I say, going to work 214, and if everything went right, you should have exactly 214 stitches, but just count them just to be sure. So I'm going to continue, make a jump in the video again, and work 214 trebles. When you've worked 214 trebles, you'll be at the next chain 2 space here, and here we're going to work our last corner. I'm going to work 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles in this space, chain 2 and 2 trebles. So this is corner number 4. You're going to rotate your work again by a quarter, and now you're going to work along your second long edge. So this is your second long edge, and here we're going to do the same as on the other side, but just in reverse. So we're going to start with 214 trebles, and here's the first one, is in that first stitch, and that will bring you up to the chain 2 space just before the panel. So you're going to work 214 trebles, 1 on every stitch, until you get to the panel. After the 214 trebles, you should be here at the chain 2 space again. In this chain 2 space, so this is before the panel, work 1 treble. So 1 treble in that chain 2 space. And now here's the panel again. So this is the panel up until, it's got some yarn tails, up until the first corner. So along this panel again, evenly distribute 56 trebles. And here you're again going to have to make an estimate about where to place them. So here along the side, work those trebles, 56 of them, evenly until you get here. And then I'll just show you the join again and how to change colors, because we're going to use a different color in the next round. So evenly distribute 56 trebles here along the edge of the panel. So I have 56 trebles here, evenly distributed. I've done my best. I again had to take 2 tries before I had them nicely done. Now we're going to join. You have 2 trebles here. That first treble after the chain 2 space, there's a chain 2, and then in that first treble join with a slip stitch. Then a slip stitch to the next treble, and we're going to make a slip stitch in the chain 2 space, and with that slip stitch we're going to change colors to yarn D if you have Our Tribe, and yarn E if you have Color Crafter. So I'm going to just make a slip stitch. So I'm going to go into the chain space and then make the slip stitch itself with yarn D. So that means I have yarn D on my hook now, because I have an Our Tribe kit, and then we're going to continue with yarn D or E if you have Color Crafter in the next round. Leave yarn A here attached. We're going to pick that up 2 rounds from now. Round 2 of the border. I'm going to start with a chain 2, so in color D or E. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch. Then in the chain space work 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles. That's your first corner. 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles, and 2. There we go. That's your first new corner made. Now we're going to work actually just a very small repeat. We're going to work until we're to the other side. We're going to skip 3 stitches and then work 5 trebles in the next, and we're going to repeat that until we're to the end. And I just have things a bit tangled here. So skip 3 stitches. So you have 1, 2, 3 stitches skip. Then in the 4th stitch here, in the next stitch, work 5 trebles. So that's a little shell. That's 2, 3, 4, 5 trebles. And repeat. So again, skip 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. And in the stitch after, work 5 trebles. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And repeat again. And this you're going to do 1, 2, 3 skip and then 5 trebles in the next. And this you're going to do until you get to the other side. Then I'll just show you the end. You're going to have, depending on whether you're on the long or the short side, you'll have a different number of stitches left at the end. But repeat this until you're to the next corner. So skip 3 stitches and then work 5 trebles in the stitch after. So I've repeated these shells and I'm now at the next corner, and at this point you see I have 2 stitches left before the chain 2 space. Now it will depend on whether you're on the short or the long side, whether you have 2 or 3 stitches left here, so that won't be the same on your short and long side. So I've got here 2 stitches left. So your last 2 or your last 3 stitches, whichever, going to skip those, and then in the corner work, in the chain 2 corner space, work a new corner. So that's 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles. There you go. And that's your new corner. And this corner is exactly the same as the corner we started with. That means you're now again going to skip 3 stitches and then work a shell. Skip 3 stitches and work a shell. Go all the way around, so you're going to work exactly this on your other 3 edges also. And when you get to the first stitch, you're going to close there with a slip stitch. I'll just show you how to do that also to change colors back to yarn A. At the end of round 1, just to show you how to close, I'm going to do a slip stitch in the first of the 2 trebles. That's to close the round. Make a slip stitch into the next stitch, and now we're going to slip stitch into the chain space, and while we do that we also change back to yarn A. So I'm just going to change to yarn A. So at the end of round 2 you've got yarn A back on your hook, and then for round 3 we're going to use yarn A again. Round 3, chain 1. This is again not a stitch, and in the corner we make our first new corner. So that's a double crochet, chain 1. If you want to, you can mark this chain 1 to help you find the corner later on, if you want to, and another double crochet. The corner is a double, chain 1 and a double. Now we're going to start the edge here. We're going to work in the stitches from 2 rows below. So these are the stitches here that we skipped. We're going to be working in that row there. I'm going to start with a V-stitch, and that's going to be a treble, chain 2 and a treble in the second of these 3 stitches that we skipped here. Yarn over. So in the second stitch there, and be sure to keep the stitches from row 2 to the back, that you don't accidentally work over them. Treble, and chain 2, and work a treble in the same stitch. You see here in the same stitch, and again be sure to keep the stitches here to the back. You don't want to do this. You really want to stay in front of them. And a treble. So that's the V stitch. So treble, chain 2 and the treble. We come up to the next shell, this shell here, and in the middle, so in the third of the 5 stitches, work a double. And this you're going to repeat till you get to the other side. So I'll show you again. So coming down here in these 3 stitches that we skipped, in the center stitch, the middle one, work a V. So in the center stitch here, work a V stitch, so that's a treble, chain 2 and a treble, and then come up, and in the third of these 5 stitches in the middle here, work a double. So you see you're really working in front of the shells. I'll show you once more, and then you repeat this until you're to the corner. Then I'll just show you the corner again. So that's a treble, chain 2 and a treble. And then on top of the next shell here in the middle, work a double. So repeat this until you're almost to the next corner. I'll just show you the corner again. I've just worked this last double crochet here. I'm almost to the corner. Here's the chain 2 corner space. So this last situation here might be slightly different, because if you have 3 stitches, you'll of course work in the center, but there were also situations in which you had just 2 stitches there. I'm going to work in the second stitch, but you can also work in between them. I'm going to take the second stitch there. If you have 3 stitches here before the corner, because on your long edges you'll have 3 stitches, you'll of course take the center one, just like you did over here. So I'm just going to yarn over. I'm going to take it in that second stitch there, 1 treble, chain 2 and treble in the same stitch. I'm going to slightly turn my work. Then in the corner work a double, chain 2, so chain 2 in the corner and a double. And now you're again at your next edge, and repeat, do exactly the same. So again, skipping these 2 trebles here here below, you've got 3 stitches in the center one, work that V and work the double crochet on top of the shell and go all the way around, and at the end join with a slip stitch in the first double crochet and then slip stitch to the chain 2 again, but I'll show you that again, and then we change colors. At the end of round 4, just done that last V stitch there. Then we're going to close on the first double crochet here with a slip stitch, and then move to the chain 2 space with the slip stitch and change to yarn D or E if you have color crafter, again with a slip stitch in the chain space, and then we continue with color D or E in the next round. Round 4, I'm going to start with a chain 2, and then in the chain 2 corner space here work 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles. 1, 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles and 2. What we're now going to do is we're going to skip the next double crochet and then do 5 trebles in the space on top of the V-stitch. So that's actually here the chain 2 space, going to work in that space, going to work 5 trebles. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 trebles in that space. And that's it. Repeat. So again, we're going to skip the double crochet and then come to the next space and work 5 trebles in there. You're going to repeat that right up to the end of the row. 2, and then when you get to the end of the row, your first edge, I should say first edge, then you're going to work a corner. So go 5 trebles. When you get to the other side, you're going to work a new corner. That's going to be 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles in the chain 2 space, and then again 5 trebles in each and every space. So in every space you work 5 trebles, and in the corner space, chain 2 space, you work 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles. When you're towards the end of the round, you're going to close in the same way we did before. So on the first treble you close with a slip stitch, then slip stitch to the next treble, and in the chain 2 space make a slip stitch and change to yarn A. Just find yarn A here and change to yarn A. At this point you can cut yarn D or E because 2 rounds from now we're going to be using a different color. Round 5 with yarn A, this time going to work chain 1, double crochet in the chain space, chain 2 and a double crochet in the chain space. That's your new corner made. We're again going to be working V-stitches along the edge. We're going to be working them in the double crochets from 2 rows below. Now our first double crochet, or first V-stitch is going to be in this double crochet here from 2 rows down. That one then might be slightly hidden behind the stitches. Just yarn over, then in that first stitch, 2 rows down, and be sure to miss your stitches to the back. Work a treble, chain 2 and a treble. And that's your first V-stitch, and it's really in front of your work. Come to your shell here with the 5 trebles. In the center one, stitch number 3, work a double. Then again, here in the double crochet between these V-stitches, work your next V-stitch. And of course you're going to again make sure that you're in front of the stitches from the previous round. Chain 2 and another treble in the same stitch. And again here on the next shell and stitch number 3, work a treble. Continue with this until you're to the other side. So you're going to work a V-stitch in the double crochet here, and then a double crochet on top of the shell, and a V-stitch and a double, a V-stitch and a double. Continue until you're to the other side. I'll just quickly show you the corner, but it is in essence the same as what you've already done. I'm just to the next corner here. Here's the next corner. Just work my last double crochet there. Then you're going to work the last V-stitch here in this double just before the corner. So in there, in that last stitch, work a V-stitch. So that's a treble, chain 2, and a treble in the same stitch. Then moving on to the chain 2 space, work a corner. So that's a double, chain 2, and a double. And now on the next edge you're going to do exactly the same as everything that you've just done on the first edge. Go all the way around and then close on the first stitch with the slip stitch. Just at the end of the round, just at the last V-stitch, to close you have here the first double crochet. You're going to close on that double with a slip stitch. You're going to move to the chain 2 space here with a slip stitch, and then we're going to attach color F if you have an art tribe, and color C if you have a color crafter. So make a slip stitch to the chain 2 space and attach color F art tribe, C color crafter, and still leave yarn A attached for the moment. Round 6, you have color F or C on your hook, and you're going to repeat row 4. And that's the row here with the shells. Going to repeat them here in the V-stitches. So in the V-stitch you're going to work the shells again, just exactly like you did in row 4. When you've gone all the way around, this is what the round looks like. So you've made those shells again in the V-stitches. At the end of the row, switch back to yarn A. Last round of the blanket, round 7, repeat round 5. So you're again going to be working the V-stitches along the entire edge of the blanket. So repeat round 5. When you're finished with the entire blanket, last thing to do is to add the label. There's a label in your kit. You'll notice that the label does, at least my label, doesn't have any holes in it. So first thing to do is just take your needle and just, if you hold it steady, you can actually punch holes through this label. Just do that at the 4 corners. Then it'll be able for you to join the label to your blanket. So take a moment to just punch holes in your label. To join your label to the blanket, what I've decided to do is I'm going to join it here at the bottom of the panel. So I'm going to put my label here, or maybe in this direction. Don't know yet. But join your label somewhere where you feel okay. That's where it's most beautiful. I'm actually not sure if I want to put it on here because it'll cover this first pillar. So I'm thinking maybe actually I'll put it over here because here it won't cover these nice pillars. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to add it to my blanket here. So choose a space where you want to have it, and then I'm going to use yarn A. I've still got some yarn left. I'm going to use yarn A to sew my label to the fabric, and but you can of course also use any of the other colors that you have left. Yeah, I'm going to put it here like this, and then I'm just going to sew that on. And that's it, all done. When your label is joined to your fabric, you're finished. What you'll notice is that the border really rolls inward. So at this point I do advise you to really block your blanket, and that'll help this border to become flat. So block your blanket to the size specified in the pattern, and then you've got a beautiful and lovely blanket. brings us to the end of this project. Thank you for watching and hope to see you soon for a new project.